I had an email the other day from a friend who was trying to draw a little box with a sliding lid, and he wanted to put a recessed finger pull in, something like this. And my initial response to him was to tell him to use a cone shape and recess that in, which really would work, but it's not quite the right shape. And then I got to thinking about, well, if you were in the shop, how would you do this? If you have a bunch of them to do, maybe a Forstner bit would be a good option. And a Forstner bit's shape is essentially a cylinder. So it seemed to me that a cylinder would be the right tool or the right shape to use for the intersection here. Anyway, here's a way to go about drawing that. So here's the box ready for the little finger pull. And I'm going to do a little bit of quick layout with some guidelines. So I find the center line there, and I'm going to put a guideline in here at a 1/2 inch up. That gives me a place where I can put the center of my circle. I've already set the number of sides for my circle to 48. I want a smoother curve for this than I would get if I used a 24 segment circle. And so we'll drag out a 1 inch diameter circle or 1/2 inch radius. And I want to have one of the little straight edges on the circle run across the center line of the box at 90 degrees. I don't want a point there because that just, to me, doesn't look all that great. It's up to you, I guess, if you want to change that or not. So I'm going to rotate the circle. So I clicked at the center of the circle with the rotate tool, and then I found the midpoint on the edge. I'm just going to bring that down here to my vertical guideline. And so if I zoom in here close, you can see that I've got an edge now that's parallel to the top of the box. And I'm going to use push-pull. We'll use 1 inch for the push-pull distance. Finished with those guidelines, so we'll get rid of those. I do want to, I'm going to add another guideline in though to use as a temporary thing along with the cylinder. And so I'll drag a right to left selection box around it to select it. And then while holding Control, the option on the Mac, I will select the cylinder, and I'm going to move it in a little bit here, maybe 1/4 inch. And I'm not sure exactly what angle I want to use for entering the lid with the Forstner bit, so I'm going to experiment because we can do that here very easily. I'm going to copy that down 1 3/8 inch, and then I'm going to hit the asterisk key and hit 3, and now that gives me a total of 4 different options to use for picking an angle here. So we can experiment with this all in one go, and then we can pick out the one we like and use it. So we'll rotate this first cylinder, and so I've selected it, and I want to rotate it around this guideline, and that's the reason I put that guideline in there. If I get the rotate tool and click and hold and drag along the guideline, it stands the rotate tool up in the right orientation. Then I can release that and click and rotate. And so this first one I think we'll try at 10 degrees and see what we get. The next one, we just repeat the process. Let's try this one at 15. This one at 20. And of course you could pick any angles you want in that process. This one I'm going to do something a little bit different. And that is I'm going to first squash that down a little using the scale tool. And let's try going down to like 0.6. Maybe this would be sort of like if you were using a kind of a flat gouge or shallow curve gouge. And rotate this one, and maybe we'll put this one in at 15 degrees. And now we'll position these. Actually, before we position them, I'm going to reverse their faces. And the reason for that is what I'm really after is a part of one of these cylinders, and I want its inside faces. Those are the ones that are going to show. So if I reverse the faces now, I have that all taken care of when the time comes. And I'm going to use the move tool and move those down. I'm just going to move them down halfway into the lid. Even that dimension, you can change that if you want. We're finished with the guidelines again, so we'll get rid of those. And now I'm going to use Control X. This would be Edit Cut. Be Command X on the Mac. And I'm going to cut those cylinders to the clipboard. And then I'll open the lid for editing and use Edit Paste in Place. And I'm using my keyboard shortcut for that. So now those are in the component, but you'll notice there's no black edge here or where these things pass through that face because there's no intersection. We need to do an intersection, but before doing that, because there's the potential to create some tiny little faces that would result in holes, I'm going to make a copy of this, and then I'm going to scale it up, and in this case, maybe by a factor of 10. That scale factor is not critical at all. And now, triple click on these cylinders to select all of their geometry. Notice we're not getting the lid because there's no intersection there. And then we'll get the top face of the lid. That's the only one that's involved in the intersection. Right click, intersect faces with selection. And then let's just do something like that. Right to left selection box gets the cylinders above the surface. Hit delete. And for some reason we left a line there. Not a big deal, we'll just erase that one. So now we have 4 different shapes, and if I get the select key or hit the space bar to get the select tool and select those faces, I can delete those, and now I've got my finger pull options. So then which one do we like here the best? That's kind of our next decision. Or maybe we leave all 4 of those in there, I don't know. I kind of like the one that's more squashed looking. So maybe we'll use a gouge and cut this thing instead of using a Forstner bit. So what I'm going to do is just drag a left to right selection box around the ones I want to get rid of. And then hit the delete key. And they're gone. And then I'm going to go back to the original one, so we don't need this big one anymore. Go back to the original one, and we're going to put it where we want it on the lid. Maybe, how about a ½ inch from the end of the box? So I'm just going to set a guideline there. That way I don't have to know how far I'm going to move this thing. And we'll just click on this edge and drag it down, making sure we stay on the red axis, the red direction. I'm holding the shift key to lock that. And we'll just bring it down here till we get to the guideline. And there's our finger pull. Give this a try and see what you think.